But there are people going, well, last year they lost to a bad Giants team in Arizona and Seattle. Yeah, that was last year. And I know that this is not the majority, but it's some people. So listen up. Here we go. Let's be honest now. What's different? Why is 10-2 this year different than 10-2 last year? Well, how about the offensive and defensive coordinators? Does that do anything for you? If you're having trouble, because we're here for you. We are here for you to make you feel better on a Therapy Thursday. We're going to contrast this year to last year that way. Both coordinators are new. You hated Brian Johnson at the time, even though it was all Nick Sirianni's fault. Then they hated Sean Desai, even though it wasn't all his fault, and they brought in Matt Patricia. Any way you slice it, Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore are upgrades. That's why it's different. How about your running back? Now, Swift is actually not having a bad year in Chicago, but you know what he's not? Second in MVP, odds, like Saquon Barkley is. That's different. That's different. How about Bradbury? How about that? You had Bradbury out there last year. This year you got Quinyon Mitchell. You've seen Maddox. Out Maddox. Here comes Cooper the G. Remember Cunningham and Morrow's back? Well, Cunningham's out of football. Remember Shaq Leonard? He's also out of football. And now you have Bond and Dean. Remember Byard, who didn't want to be here? Well, now you got CJ GJ with Blankenship. There's enough difference to where you don't just have to say it's different. It is different. You don't have to just go, we don't have to really convince you guys. Like, you guys know the roster. You know this is different. For you, and I'm speaking to a small group that just want to hang on for dear life to last season. Isn't the team different enough when you go and look at the contrast to where we don't have to do that anymore? Aren't we at that point? So let me go over to you, Ricky Bo.
Yep.
You've been on board early, especially on the defensive side of the ball with this team. You noticed something different, and you jumped on it early. Yeah. You didn't wait till 10-2. You jumped on it maybe at 4-2.
Right.
For those that are on this Therapy Thursday, before we move on to other things, the people that are just holding on to last season for dear life, could you, as a former pro athlete, help the people feel a little bit better about not having PTSD about last year?
There is nothing the same year to year. No matter what sport you're playing, nothing is the same. Everything is different. You look at this team. Roster-wise, they are completely different than they were in 2023. So you got to erase that part. Coaching staff, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, completely different. They weren't here last year. They don't care about last year. I think the only people that are really caring about last year are those limited amounts of people who actually think that collapse is going to happen again.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, a lot of the offense is here. Yeah, but a lot of the offense they're playmakers. And I really believe that the offense, especially even the offensive line, may actually be better than last year, which is kind of scary thought. The offensive line was very good with Kelsey there last year. Now you got Juergens running the show, and it seems to have not missed a beat. As a matter of fact, they're opening up gaping holes for a running back. You got a new running back, a different running back, a game-changing running back on offense. There are so many things that are completely different that have happened from year to year. Last year, I would say they were 10-1 at one point last year, and I probably could have looked back and said they could have lost 6 of those games that they did win.
Yeah, probably.
Just with a little bad luck or maybe a slip up here or a slip up there, but they continued winning games. So we were kind of on that, the magic carpet ride, if you will, but you almost knew it was going to fall out. Yep. You could feel it. Mm-hmm. This team, I don't feel that way. You hear me saying going in the right direction a lot.
Yeah.
Why do I say that? Because I didn't think that team was going in the right direction last year. I thought they were waiting for that one speed bump that was going to catch them, and it was all going to fall apart.
White knuckling.
Which turned into the San Francisco 49ers last year.
Right, and that got them to 10-2.
And what happened there is that they realized they were not as good as a team as they thought they were. And right now, what I'm seeing is every obstacle that has stood in this team's way. We have brought up, when are you going to be happy with the team? And it's been the Commanders. It's been the Ravens. When they beat, and people are still out there saying, well, now it's Detroit. Yeah, I can say that every single year of football, that you are going to be compared or looked at that these two teams are going to clash at some point. I could sit here and say, yeah, until they beat Detroit, they're not the greatest team in the world. But I think right now that they are the best team in the NFC, for sure. I think this team has grown. I think they've grown in a positive direction. The other thing is that once the defense got kind of, I guess, studied, looked over, and then everybody was implemented in what they needed to do and they bought in, the defense has been unbelievable. What wins Super Bowls? Defense. And you still, on the other half of the ball, have a tremendous offense. This team, I don't know what you'd be looking at right now to say this team is not on a path to New Orleans, because they are.
Well, Ricky, here's the one thing. And on this Therapy Thursday, I hope this is helpful for you, for those people holding on. Okay, that's why we contrast. Okay, we look at it and we say what's different. Okay? Now, compare and contrast. And I don't like comparison, but we're going to contrast today because I don't want to do comparison. That's a thief of joy. Things are better in a lot of areas. There's also areas where the personnel's the same, but the player is better. For example, you had rookie Jalen Carter last year. Now, early in the season when he was being dominant, he was being single covered. Next to Fletcher Cox and Davis in that rotation. Barrett Brooks or anybody who studies film will tell you by the end of the year, it wasn't just a rookie wall. He started to get the double teams, and that's part of the reason why Fletcher Cox in his last season was feasting, because for the first time in years, Fletcher Cox was not being double teamed at all. You saw what happened in 2022 where you really had to pick your poison either on every play, either Fletcher Cox, Hargrave, Sweat, Brandon Graham, or Reddick were getting a sack. That's why they had like the second most in NFL history, because you couldn't double team anybody or you had to try to double team everybody. Fast forward a year, without Hargrave, it was different. And you had a lot of young guys in there with Davis and Carter. And Carter started getting those double teams and he didn't know how to beat it. Fast forward to this year, yeah, it's the same guy, but it's not the same guy. It is not the same guy. People don't say Nakobe D. When you saw Nakobe D last year, he was on one leg. He had the bad foot, and then he tried to come back from it too soon, injured it worse, had to have foot surgery. In fact, he got that foot surgery, I think, in November or December. In November. And then he wasn't even cleared, to give you an idea how much, how much he was hampered. He wasn't cleared until July fully from that surgery. That was a serious injury he was trying to play through. So that's why he didn't look like a good linebacker. He's dragging his foot. Look at him this year. So while the person might be the same, look at the ability of the person. And Jurgens was playing guard last season. And he did a fine job playing guard next to Kelsey. But he's been a center since he was in, middle school. He's been a center. Then he was a center in high school. Then he was a center in college. He's a center. All of a sudden, he plays center there. And to your point, Ricky, you don't miss a beat. Same person playing better because he's back in his natural spot, the spot where he's most comfortable. He was a little undersized at guard. Who knows how Jason Kelsey's career goes if he plays guard instead of center? He seems like getting to the second level, the perfect center. If this doesn't help you, I don't know what else to tell you, because we don't want to do this 24/7 every week forever. But I recognize that you guys are not as up for this Panthers game as you were up for the Ravens game. And you guys are not as up for this Panthers game as you will be for the Steelers game. Which brings us to the head coach, Nick Sirianni. Because he is the same. And some people will hang their hat, even though we laid out. Ricky, you said a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I said a bunch of reasons why they're different. Not to mention Saquon Barkley once again, like we did in the beginning. Saquon Barkley's different. But they'll say the head coach is the same. Okay, fair. Well, here's a measuring stick this week for this head coach. Because the Eagles are human beings. The players are human. And look at yourself as a fan. You were up for that Ravens game. You were up for it. The fans were up for it. They got done. They put down the plate Thanksgiving night and started thinking about the Ravens on Sunday.
Yep.
You're going to be way up for that for that Steelers game.
In-state game. Steelers are playing good football. Russell Wilson. Come on, yeah.
People are going to be up for it. You're not that up, I recognize, for the Panthers. The same thing could apply to the players. With the players, they recognize that the Ravens were a real challenge. They recognize the Steelers are going to be a real challenge. And a human nature could say maybe they wouldn't be as up for the Panthers game. But this is where your head coach comes into play. And already this week, he put in certain things to try to fight that complacency. Last season, Nick Sirianni would have said, we'll see you on Wednesday. This year's Nick Sirianni, because that's when you really start practice, this year's Nick Sirianni sees that this is a, quote, trap game, brings them in to work on Monday to keep that sense of urgency. That's a coach, same coach, doing something different.